I grabbed this 1 inch by 24 inch round stain grade panel from Lowe's. You can get them for $18, and they also have 12-inch ones there as well. And I'm just going to remove the plastic. I then took a Gen foam brush, some General Finishes Antique Walnut Gel Stain, and a pair of gloves and paper towels. And I'm just going to take the gel stain and rub it on top of the round panel. You want to do the top, the sides, and the bottom as well. And then you're just going to take your paper towel and wipe off any extra gel stain. Now this gel stain is so easy to work with, and I think it looks really nice when you just apply the gel stain instead of the paint. As you can see, you can still see some of the wood grain, and I really like this color from General Finishes. And I allowed that to dry, and then I took another Gen foam brush and some of my Wise Owl matte varnish, and I'm just going to apply the varnish on top of the gel stain. Now once that was fully dry, I found the center of my board, and I just made a little dot that I could see. And I got this stencil from Studio R12, and I lined it up with my center mark. And I'm just going to use some green frog tape to hold the stencil in place. Now this stencil was perfect. It fit perfectly on this top. And I have this 4-inch foam roller. I get these from Lowe's. And I'm going to use some Wise Owl Snow Owl paint. And I'm just going to roll it on my roller, and you want to remove the excess before you go on top of your stencil. Now I'm just using a blow dryer quickly because I want a second coat of the Snow Owl, so that it is a little more white. So then I just repeated the same steps. You just want a very small amount of paint on your roller so it doesn't seep under your stencil. And then there we go, we're just going to lift that half. Then I allowed that side to dry. And then I went to the right side and did the other half of my circle. Now the reason why I did the varnish before I stenciled my paint on is because sometimes when working with the gel stain, the paint will bleed into the stain when you go to sand. And I felt this helps with that. So again, when you go to stencil, your first coat is going to be kind of transparent. So I do a quick blow dry and then do a second coat before I lift my stencil. And there you go. I feel like I met them in the middle pretty closely, but there were a couple areas I needed to touch up. So I just took a very small art brush and just filled in any white where I needed to. Now once that was fully dry, I took a 220 grit sandpaper and I just sanded on top of my board. This just helps smooth out the paint, and you can distress it as much or as little as you'd like. And then I just removed all of the sanding dust with a wet paper towel. And then I took my Wise Owl matte varnish and did a top coat on top of that. And I actually did a couple top coats of the varnish just to protect it. And you want to allow for proper dry time between each coat. Now I grabbed these hairpin legs. I found them at a yard sale for $15 for the set, but you can find them on Amazon. And because mine were a little older, they had a little rust on them, so I took my Wise Owl furniture salve and my 2-inch palm brush, and I just went over them with the salve, and it cleaned them up very nicely. If you cannot find a used pair, you can find them on Amazon. They're about $50 for the 28-inch set. And I'm going to take 3 of them and I went about 3 inches in from the edge of the board, and I put the second one 3 inches in from the left side of the board, and then I placed the third one. So it almost looks like the shape of a home plate. And you just want to measure and make sure everything is pretty even. And then I just had these small screws. You just want to make sure they're short enough so they don't go through the top of your board. And I just screwed them into the holes. Each hairpin leg took 4 screws. And there we go. Now we're done with our first table, and I feel like this is so easy and it came out really nice, and it's a great Christmas gift for somebody. And now I'm going to go and show you a second table. Now I grabbed this pine spruce edge glued panel from Lowe's as well, and this one measures 24 by 36 inches, and it's 3/4 of an inch thick. And this I got for $20. And I'm going to take my Gen foam brush and some Wise Owl stain eliminating primer. And the primer comes in 3 colors. I'm going to use white. You want to just make sure you stir it really well. And I'm just going to pour a little on a plate here. And using the Gen foam brush, I'm just going to cover the entire panel with the primer. Now I'm going to be using paint on this board, that's why I'm using the primer, so none of the knots bleed through. I'm going to take my 4-inch foam roller and some Wise Owl chocolate paint and cover the entire board. Once that was dry, I took some Wise Owl Snow Owl and covered on top of the chocolate. I allowed that to all fully dry, and then I took my 220 grit sandpaper and gave it a sanding. Now the reason why I paint the chocolate on first is so when I'm sanding, if I want a distressed look, it'll go down to the chocolate paint rather than the light bare wood. So it gives you a little bit of the distressed. And you just want to wipe off any sanding dust. Next, I have my tape measure, and I'm going to measure about 4 inches down on my board and take some painter's tape. This is frog tape. And just make a line from the right to the left. And then I went about 1/4 of an inch above that, marked on both the right and left side, and then put my tape across. And I did this down the entire panel, and I'm basically just making pinstripes. So I'm using the tape to make my stripes, and if you measure on both the right and left side with your lines and meet them, they will come out pretty straight. And again, I repeated this till I was down the entire board. I took my General Finishes gel stain, the Antique Walnut, and a very skinny, I believe this is a 1-inch foam brush. And I'm going to just fill in the gel stain where I made the pinstripes. Then you're going to take your paper towel and just wipe them off. And then you're going to lift your tape. And now we just use the gel stain and some small pinstripes to make the top of the coffee table look like slats. Now I flipped it over, and now I have my hairpin legs. These ones are 16 inches. I got them from Amazon, and you get them for $20 for 4 of them. And I went about 1 inch in from the side of the panel, and I put a hairpin leg on each corner of the table. Now the coffee table did need some support in the center, so I just took some wood and I measured between each of the hairpin legs, and I just cut the wood based on those measurements, and I put one on the top and bottom here, and using some of my Elmer's wood glue and a wood clamp, I just allowed that to dry. And then I measured between those two pieces of wood, and I cut 3 smaller pieces that I put in between the 2 longer pieces vertically. And I just allowed all of that to dry. And this just gave the center of the table some support. I felt like it was a little wobbly without it. And if you're going to be using it, it definitely needed to be a little stronger. Now, I would have done this first before I painted the bottom with the chocolate, but it was an afterthought. So then after that was all fully dry, I took my Wise Owl chocolate paint and just covered all of the unfinished wood. And then once all of that fully dried, I flipped the table over and I did top coat it with the Wise Owl varnish as well. And there you go, guys. There's some 2 very easy ways you can make your own side table or coffee table. I hope you enjoyed this video. Paint products can be found on our webpage at chalkitupfancy.com. And don't forget, you can check out some other tutorials over on our webpage as well. Have a great day.